and welcome to the No Taboo Woo Show.
I'm Sandra Logan.
And I'm Gail Chisholm.
If you enjoy being a fly on the wall of deep and meaningful conversations between pals on all things spirituality, healing, and personal empowerment, then you have landed on the right podcast.
Enjoy today's episode.
Hello. Welcome to the show. We were just laughing because on Riverside, the platform we're using, it does a countdown. It always is like your get ready for the camera moment.
I know. Although I did laugh today that I was like, this is the thing now, because if you'd seen some of the states, I had recorded the audio only version. This has actually been a really good motivator to get properly dressed in the morning. Like, I know that sounds ridiculous. And I think we've chatted about this before around like who are you getting dressed for? Is it that do we do it for ourselves? Is it for other people? But it's an external expression. It's your message to the world. It is also your message to yourself. And sometimes I'm guilty of being like, just stay in my like leisure wear and my hoodie, which randomly is actually often more expensive than my non-leisure wear outfit. And yeah, so it's nice. And then obviously put a little bit of slap on, bit of mascara.
I know.
Rings.
It's something I definitely find like when I'm in the van, and especially if it's cold outside and I'm just like, I just want to be cozy and I'm putting on the layers and the jumper and all that. But I just often I'll not feel like myself. And it's funny you've opened with this because I've just published today the episode 28. If anybody wants to go into a deep dive and get some tips from Gail on styling and looking at your wardrobe and tapping into your essence and your signature style and stuff, it's such a juicy episode. And it was so brilliant to edit because I was like, this is such a good reminder for me. And it like made me reflect then on how have I been dressing recently. And like you say, who am I dressing for? Because it's like often I'll spend a lot of time on my own and I'm just taking the dog a walk or I'm sitting doing edits and stuff. It's not like I'm like going out into the world and fancy dancy. So, but then it's like how you feel in your clothes. And so today I was like, I've not worn this cardi for ages and I love it. It's got like big balloon sleeves and it is actually really cozy.
I was thinking when you showed it does look cozy, but I was like, oh, you look really summery. But I was just thinking there when you said something like, it's quite mild here, but it's not as mild as that. We're probably about 10 or 11. But I was thinking, I was reading an article that resonated with me, and I was about like your wardrobe and style. And sometimes like when you're starting to feel not in alignment with your wardrobe as well, as that can be a sign that you're like leveling up, you're changing path, I mean, you could use like quantum shift and whatever you want to call it. Like that can actually be an external sign of internal change, that actually things that you would normally put on that are normally a favorite, they're just not singing to you anymore. And actually that's a good time to start getting rid of things, because I probably talked about, I haven't listened to episode 28 yet. Getting rid of those things, it's also getting rid of stagnant energy. But yeah, it's interesting because I know we quite often talk about like internal signs, or maybe where you're feeling a little bit like what's sort of going on. I'm not really quite sure, but actually a sign can be, and it might not even be your wardrobe stuff. It could even be like your hair. Like I've been really feeling called that I might cut a fringe in myself. And it's
Gail texted me the other day and was like, I decided to cut Hamish's hair. I thought if I give him a groom, it'll stop me from cutting my own fringe.
I know. I follow quite a few hairdressers. Yeah, I follow quite a few hairdressers who do it, and they talk about how empowering it is, and like it's just hair, it grows back, and that actually, because sometimes you're like, oh, I don't let my hairdresser touch it, but it's yours, and you can be like really intuitive with it. But I always think that it's like there are little breadcrumbs, aren't there, in your external world that are telling you that something's like needing, like you're changing. And so your external expression of yourself is changing.
Yeah.
Very cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very cool,
really
isn't it?
Cool.
Do you want to start with the card?
Clothes are such a good telltale. Yeah, I'm intrigued because you've pulled a card from Ancient Stones and I love that deck.
And the other weird sort of synchronicity. I was just
Yes,
going to
we've
say
got a
the
sale
others.
on for our new deck, Rebecca Pebbles.
I know. It's it does look really cool. It's very sort of black cards and gold, and it's I think called Soul Oracle or something like that. But what's really interesting, which I hadn't appreciated, so synchronicity number 2, tying back to episode 28, is that apparently this was the same deck that was called on that for that
It
episode,
was.
which I haven't listened to today. I hadn't realized it was out, but I was just looked under my desk and I was like, oh, I feel an oracle today. So
So what
the
we
deck
got?
obviously has something to say. So today's card that came out is Obstacle. This is why I'm loving the fact we're on Vision now.
Oh, and you can see
And
the car.
I know. So there's
Oh,
for anyone on audio.
that reminds me of the caves in Cornwall when I was down at the beach, and there was a bit with caves that was really cool, and it opened up it's like a big portal.
That's quite interesting that you said that, because actually this is Obstacle and there's a big fuck off stone blocking the cave. So for anyone that is on audio, there's a lady, she's on a beautiful golden path and she's walking towards like a beautiful light, but there is a big stone in the way. But it's interesting how when you've seen that, you've thought it looks like you could walk through it. Like you've looked at it and thought, that does look like a cave. It's like the entrance way into the cave rather than a big obstacle that's in
Yeah.
the way. Let me read the thing
What comes
and
to
you
you?
can, well, let me read the thing and then I'll see what is coming up for you. So obstacle, it says, find another road, flexibility, change. There's nothing subtle about stone. If a large one appears upon your path, it can block your way forward. You can try all you like, but attempting to move something that will not budge is probably a waste of your energy. You're better off admitting defeat. When obstacles appear on our path, it's easy to feel frustrated and stubbornly try to push on through. However, sometimes obstacles occur in order to show us another way. This alternate route may feel like a detour, but if you're able to zoom out of your life and gain a greater perspective, you may find that what you thought was an obstacle was actually a blessing all along. The obstacle card is an invitation to pay attention to where there's ease and where you're trying to stubbornly cling, push, and force. If you trust the seasons of your life and let life move you, you'll not only find more flow and ease along your journey, but more joy and fun too. And the soul inquiry for this card is, where in your life are you stubbornly pushing on through? And if you weren't afraid of change, what would you do? What do you think, Sandra?
It's funny because as soon as you said obstacles, I was like, the energy is so relevant to Mercury retrograde just now. And I feel like, because it started on the 9th of November, but I feel like the pre-shadow has been strong, probably because we're in eclipse season as well. So the energy is quite intense. And there's I've noticed myself feeling like a lot of just surrendering to, like, feeling like I've got less control over things right now. So like Mercury retrograde, it's our technology, it's travel, transport, things like cars. So like Gail, for example, is having delays with getting her car back at the minute. So she's got it in getting some work. And like things like that are like perfect examples of Mercury retrograde energy. It disrupts our travel, even our communication sometimes. And like, it's the kind of time of the year that you can send that bitchy text to the wrong person and it comes back to you to bite you on the ass. So it makes you reflect on, why did I send that bitchy text in the first place? That might not have been the right way to handle that. Or, sending an email to your boss that was meant for your colleague and it's talking about them behind their back or something like that. That's the kind of energy. It's where things that you're like, things can come back. So it's like always making sure that we're moving in integrity, that we're acting in love and good intentions and all that good stuff, and checking over things like contracts and all of these kind of things. And I suppose with that card coming up, it could speak to anyone at the moment who feels like things are on hold. So whether it's like moving house or even signing a contract for something or starting a job, or maybe it's roadworks that are going on. So every time that you're trying to get to work, there's delays and, you need to factor in a little bit more travel time and things like that. So I suppose it really will depend on everybody's individual circumstances, but this can present in so many ways. So it's sort of, Mercury retrograde is a really good opportunity. It gets a bad rap, but it's a time for us to sort of sit back and reflect on things and to be like, reflect on where you are just now and reassess things. Sometimes disruptions can be a good thing because they make you take a pause and look at an area of your life that you're like, do you know what? Actually, this hasn't been working and I've been continuing with it. And it's taken for this big thing to happen for me to actually decide to make a change. So it's like, it's a time for us to think about, right, what do I want to make changes? Where do I want to make changes in my life? And how do I want to move differently through the world and all of these kind of things. And Mercury, it can be about our purpose, about how we're showing up in the world as well. It's our communication and being heard, speaking out. And so you might even right now, an old idea could come back to you. It could be like something that you've done in the past that you're like, do you know what? I'd actually like to revisit this thing because I feel like done this differently or that differently, perhaps it could have taken a different path. So sometimes it's like old energy coming back. Sometimes it's because I feel like I'm meant to do something with this. Sometimes it's because, whoa, that feels like that is still a hard no for me. So there's lots of different ways it can show up, but it's a time to reassess and then look at how do I want to move forward. Once Mercury goes direct, that's a good time then to start making those changes and making those shifts. I can't remember the specific date it goes direct again, but we do have a pre-shadow and a post-shadow with every retrograde. So take that into account. That can be a week or two that you start to sort of feel the energy and then it dissipates. So yeah, that's what came to me when you said about the obstacles card. What about you?
When I was reading it, I did think about my car. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, ah, fuck's sake. Hopefully by the time this is actually published, that my car will be back. But obviously it's that in itself is making me think about just practical shit, like what am I doing? Where am I going? How are things getting planned? And just like leaning into accepting that it'll be ready when it's ready. But what that weirdly is forcing me to do is to take some time on certain things around, like, if I think about in a literal sense, like, trying to establish myself as a celebrant round here, like, as a celebrant, a key tool for your job is actually a vehicle to go and meet your
Yeah.
clients, to go and speak to funeral directors, to get to a crematorium. So, like, until I know what's happening with my vehicle, really, it would, well, I mean, for some people, they wouldn't give a fuck, right? But I don't think it's in acting in integrity to know stuff. Like, I couldn't make an appointment just now to go and introduce myself to a funeral director when I don't know how I would get there. And I couldn't then take a client call thinking, because I don't know buses and stuff like that. So I'm just a bit like, okay, that might sound like excuses, but I'm like, well, it's just not in my nature to be like, and I can't rely on Bob to be like, so do you fancy being my chauffeur? And then I'm like, well, if I hired a car, because people are, you could hire a car. And I'm like, yes, I could, but that then means what I'm working for is less. And actually taking some time isn't really going to do in the bigger picture, which is part of what this is. Taking a bit of time and having an enforced slowdown it's not really going to do any harm. And interestingly, what it does do is it really gives me pause to think, well, who am I in this space? And I don't have to replicate what I was doing up there. So weirdly, in the kind of the enforced downtime, is there is that moment to reflect and look from a different perspective, I suppose. So on that practical level, but it's difficult, right? Because we just like, sometimes we just get really fucked off because you're like, well, I was going this way and now something is stopping me. But if we can just take a pause and then think, as you say, like, well, what about if I was to look from a different point of view? Or what does this give me the opportunity to do? And I think actually in the last pod we recorded, we were touching on about this is the season for slowing down and things as well. And so sometimes this is especially if we think of an obstacle at this time of year to slow us down, that's more to like lean in and tune in to the seasons and how things are actually going. And then the other bit, just thinking from like a kind of communication point of view, is actually maybe this just gives us pause to think about am I pushing against something that isn't
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting one that's sort of come up because, like, as I say, the other thing that's popped into my head, so there's the literal thing around my car and seeking and some of this is me with the tools and things we've done. It's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've been really frustrated and pissed off about it. But I'm like, okay, well, if this is what's meant to be, how do I just accept it? What are the positives in this? So what can I do with my time instead? How can I still feel like I'm making
Yeah.
progress when it's not necessarily the progress I had envisaged? But actually what it's making me then
Yeah.
think about is because I'm now taking this pause, I'm not going out gung ho. I have sent out some emails to FDs and stuff like that, but I'm like, well, actually, who am I as a celebrant? And I had given that some
Yeah.
thought before, but this is a real opportunity to lean into something that feels far more in alignment. And I was messaging my friend today who's a celebrant up in Scotland. She'd actually messaged me and said that she'd been asked to do a wedding that she can't do and would I be interested? I was like, hell yeah. So keep your fingers crossed, listeners. But what I then said to her, because there's a funeral director, there's a funeral home that I'm stalking on social media that is in a different, it's in Lancashire, but I love the vibe that they're bringing. I am and this has given me the opportunity to think, well, if that is really who I'd like to work with, how do I best put my best foot forward with them? And so actually that might be
Yeah.
slightly different tact because it's actually probably much more in alignment with like who I am and what I believe in. And so that's a different
Mm,
tact. So actually this sort of practical pause has given me the chance to think about bigger questions rather than just rushing ahead and being like, well, should just try and set myself up down here exactly the same as I set myself up back in Scotland when
yeah.
maybe this is the opportunity
Yeah.
for a reset.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's what a pause makes you do, doesn't it? It makes you sort of take a bit of time. And the word that keeps coming into my head is invitation. So it's like, what's the invitation?
That's
What's
a
the
nice word.
invitation for you at this time? Yeah. I think if we can look at through the lens of this being a gift, and sometimes it's really frustrating, and like I certainly feel that, like with the technology and stuff like that. I'm like, so I get it. Like I certainly have noticed frustration, and that's
Hello,
obviously my
episode
not self theme
27.
as well. I'm a fellow. I know episode 27. Oh, don't even get us started. And boring chat for you
We've
guys,
lost an
but
episode.
it's
It's on
technology.
Substack.
We've lost an episode. It's in the ether somewhere, and it was a really good one. I say that about everyone. When I heard it, I'm like, that was a great episode. But yeah, this was a goodie. We were talking about our old dating. It was that one where we talked about our old dating, um, online dating on the apps and all that jazz. So
Mm,
it was a good episode. But yeah, it's like, what is the gift at this time? And if you are on pause and things are not progressing in the way that you like, then what have you looked at it that maybe this is a blessing? That you're not meant to rush forward with that thing right now. Or like it's remembering that divine timing is at play as well. And we have like our own idea of timing in life and how and when things should happen. But this quote that I heard on YouTube years ago stuck with me, and it's that the universe doesn't wear a watch. I think if we remember that we're in these cycles that are happening on a much grander scale, and and everything is influencing us. So it's like it's almost like a permission slip not to rush as much. And you can still make progress with different areas of life. And I suppose it's like looking at where is that? And this week I've noticed so I've been feeling absolutely wiped physically, like feeling really, really tired. And I've been spending a lot more time out in nature and stuff. And I worked out. So I think this thing on my face, which is still lingering, right? My whole face swelled up. I think it was a horsefly. A horsefly bit me on the face. I know. So it was
I've
in
been bitten
timing
on
with
the
the
leg
day I was
by one, but
walking in the
that's
woods. Oh my God, it's brutal. I was like, that's aggressive. And it's gone down a lot now. But I mean, it was like really red all the way to my eye. And I had puffiness. It felt like if anybody's had a jag at the dentist before where your mouth swells up and you feel like you can't quite move your mouth properly. That's what I felt like because my face was so swollen. And I was like, with things like that as well, I was just like, it's time to get more rest. So making sure that I'm
I mean,
getting more rest at night.
that's literally Mother Nature, like, bitch slapping you with a horsefly going, "You need to slow down." They're fucking brutal. I'm saying they are brutal. I've been bitten on my legs before. And sometimes like even like midgie bites. My body responds not very nicely to them. But yeah, they're
The
not,
same.
and on the face as well, that just sounds sore.
Yeah.
Sounds
But
sore.
it's things like that that I'm like, well, I can't change. That's been done. It's happened. So how do I handle that? And listening to my body. And it's amazing that a little fly can cause such a disruption. Especially like when I think of everything that I've been through and all the change in my life over the last couple of months, and the stress of like getting things fixed in the van and the breakup and everything like that. Like it's been a lot emotionally, physically, mentally, even spiritually to process. And so sometimes it's like things like that, like our body will have a reaction as well that is like, okay, this is just your reminder showing you that like just take time out. It's okay. It's just sometimes we need to give ourselves that permission slip, don't we? That we don't need to rush forward, and then actually tapping into the inner guidance of what do I genuinely feel called to do right now, not from a sense of like rushing or a sense of pressure, but a sense of ease and intuition. Like what's my actual intuitive guidance trying to tell me right now? What's my body trying to tell me? And just going sort of more inwards as opposed to outward. It's energy is wild, man. And I always find it crazy when I hear stories of like the retrogrades and the planets and the moon and all of that and how it's impacting people, because the shit's real, man. You know, we're on this planet in the middle of a galaxy and things are happening in this cyclical nature, which is really cool. But then also there's things outside of our control, and it's just like if you continue to fight it and trying to climb over that stone or find a way around the stone, when the stone will move in its own time, or you'll shift to find a new direction. And actually there might be many blessings on the way. The vision that's come into my head is like on a video game, right? So do you remember that one? What was the one with the little one-ups? Is it Mario? Mario and Luigi? It's a me, a Mario. Did you ever play Super Mario? That's it. With the little mushrooms. And so
Yeah.
like you'd go around on these things, and if you went one way, you might not get as many one-ups, or you might not get as many stars, or whatever it is that you pick up along the way. But it's like sometimes there'll be an obstacle and then you're like, oh shit, I need to go this way. And then along there you're like running around and you're like, woo, and then you get your little boosts where you can like catapult further forward, and it's like, woo, here I go. And then you're like, okay, so I wasn't meant to take that road and try and clamber over that big boulder. I was meant to come in this other direction where the universe is supporting me, and there's, you know, surprises along the way and blessings and, you know, new characters that you'll meet and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, let's look at life more like a game. Maybe that's what that
I know.
vision's about, is treat it more like a game, and the surprise and excitement that can come from not always doing things that come from the mind, tapping in more to heart, more into your intuition and things like that. So, where have you been bitch slapped, listener? I would like to hear,
Absolutely.
not to jest, because sometimes it's serious, man. Sometimes it feels like your world is ending and things are like, you know, it feels rough. But I suppose it's like seeing the lighter side of life, and where's the opportunity for a bit more fun. Look at that sunshine coming in, by the way. I see that. It's like a little bit
I
of
think
fucking sun.
if you can reflect on when things are feeling really, really shit, like one of the things for me, like that belief that everything's happening for me. And also I'm
Yeah,
always a bit fan
yeah.
of like the universe doesn't give me anything I can't handle. And so when you're in the depths of
Mhm.
feeling crappy, like to even come back to that allows you to shift a
Yeah,
little more from like despair into hope.
yeah,
And, like, that kind of allows, and then I think that as soon as you can do that is actually you've got a different perspective. You can see you're not so blinkered or so
yeah,
narrow, and it's just like, you know, and that like, I was reflecting today when I was out with the dog, I was like, I feel like at the moment that I'm being challenged on trusting a lot, like, as in, like, things are coming up and I'm like, "This is an exercise in trust," or something else, and I'm like, "This is an exercise in trust," whether that's in a
yeah,
person, in myself, in the universe, that things are gonna happen as they're meant to, and that's hard, you know, especially when you're sort
yeah,
of feeling like a little in limbo, or, you know, maybe life doesn't feel as good as you would like it to be at the moment, but you know, you're sort of like but you can see something on the other side of that stone. but there's like a trust in
Yeah.
that, you know, it will be okay. And I think when we can start to do that, we start to step out of the spiraling, the anxiety, the constant things going round in the head. And that
Mm-hmm.
perspective just allows us to shift a little or maybe take a step to the side and have a look round. Like, you know, rather than
Yeah.
take a step back. And, you know, so sometimes, you know, that sort of metaphor. I wanted to ask you the
Yeah.
second question. So I was just thinking there as you were chatting, and you know, because I know in here we've probably done quite a lot of stuff around different perspective and the tools that we use. And for example, like if this was coming up, like we would probably use like going into a deeper tarot reading on like, give me some, where is the obstacle in my life,
Yeah.
or what might other perspective might I have? But I think it was just, as you were talking, I thought it's quite interesting in this deck how the second in question on the soul inquiry is, if you weren't afraid of change, what would you do? Which is
Mm.
interesting when we think of this in the context of, you know, this is obstacle and there's like something in your way. So I find it interesting that the soul inquiry, the second one, is much more around actually, if you weren't afraid of change, what would you do? So is it like, it's the obstacle of your own making?
Ooh,
What would you do if you weren't afraid of change?
that's a good question. That's a really good question. Like, part of me was like, I was thinking there, I experience a lot of change in my day to day with the van life element because my environment's always changing. So while I'm always like got my house with me, like I'm going to different places, I'm traveling on different roads, like especially I'm the furthest east, just out of Southampton at the minute. I'm the furthest east that I've ever driven. And so like the roads are different, the accents from people around here are different. There's loads of Londoners, it's really cool. Hear loads of like, it reminds me of EastEnders, the proper London accent.
It's like,
So it's like I was going to try it and then I was like, don't
I was
try.
going to do my
Um
impression of like Dennis and Adge,
Go on then,
where
give
it's
us it.
oh no, it's like, because there was something that came on the TV the other day advertising like a best bit of when Dennis served Ange with like divorce papers on Christmas Day. Or the other one, the classic that everyone does is Ricky
Ricky! It's a flashback to the past.
or
Is that
Sonia on
still,
our
are they still
trumpet.
making them?
Yeah. Still
I don't
doing
even know if
EastEnders,
EastEnders
yeah.
is still running.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Anyway, so like my environment is changing often and there's an adjustment that comes to that. Sometimes for me, I think that it's actually the opposite. It's learning to like be comfortable with the routine and with the same. I have noticed that. And I've been traveling much slower than I usually have, which is good in a sense, but in some ways I feel like myself getting itchy feet. And in those moments where I feel like it's like my ego's like, I want to move, because it's like you go back to your default sometimes, right? It's like this journey of readjusting to a new way of being. And so it's like I've been really taking more of a pause and not feeling that need to rush. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? You know? But I suppose for me, the change side of things speaks, what comes up is around like my purpose and how I'm showing up in the world and how I'm being of service and that kind of thing, which has been a rediscovery over the last couple of years as I've sort of moved a little bit away from doing the one-to-ones. Like at the moment, I'm not offering the one-to-ones. And then it's like, so where am I going? I feel like I'm sort of in this in-between phase. And obviously, we've been talking about where are we taking the podcast? What are we going to do with that? And collaborating further and potentially, you know, holding circles and teaching more and all this kind of stuff. Like there's a lot of opportunity available for us there. And then there's opportunities elsewhere as well that, you know, ideas that come to me. And I've been getting really into writing poetry lately and even songwriting and things like that. And that opens up a whole new world of possibilities. Is that, you know, where would I like to go with that? And it's like, I think that question that you asked is really good because when we look at, you know, if you weren't afraid of change, what would you do differently? And then it's like in our day to day. So it's like for me, there's all of these different things that have been going on in my life. And it's sort of looking at, well, maybe that's something for me to sit with further and to journal on. But those are the things specifically that are coming up. Because yeah, I notice that I feel a lot of change that goes on. And sometimes it feels like my soul's craving a little bit more of like an anchor, even if it's just for like a place that I can be and come back to, that I can leave and go and explore and then come back to. And that for me feels like change because I've not had that for so long. So yeah, what would that look like? And how would you, I think that's a big reflection is, okay, yeah, what would that look like? We can look at that sort of end picture and things like that. But then it's like, okay, how does that show up for me then now in who I am and how I'm moving through the world and the micro choices that I'm making every day? And that's what's within your control. I think that's what, when we come back to it, when we feel like, there's so many things outside of our control in our environment and circumstances going on around us and in the world, it's like, well, what can I do today? What's one micro choice that I can make that moves me forward? And that could be, like for me, is not picking up my phone and going on a YouTube video or scrolling on Vinted or whatever else, or, looking at 500 different park ups on Park for a Night that just makes me like brain melt. Instead of that, is sitting in peace and quiet and working with lyrics that have been coming to me, or, going through all of my old poems and being like, how could I put these into some sort of book and how could they flow? Just starting to play with that, play with different energy and your creativity and things like that. There's a lot of opportunities that are available for us. And I think that the change thing is a big one because it's like we always want to know what the end result's going to look like. And we don't have that information, folks. And it's a tough pill to swallow sometimes because you're like, but I want the assurance that everything's going to be okay. Like I feel my ego, even with like my writing, is that if I create a book and I put it out there, I want assurances that I'm not going to get backlash or I'm not going to get hate or ridiculed or whatever it is, because our ego goes to worst case scenario. It's like, there's no assurances. And that's where, like what Gail's saying with trust is coming back to that trust. I think that when we lean into trust and we move in faith and hope, is that then the worst case scenarios might still be lurking in the background of our mind, right? Because the ego wants to keep us safe. But it's like, it's not going to stop me from creating change in my life and doing things differently and for me to show up differently on the journey of it. Because it all starts with us. And sometimes you're just like, why does it have to start with me? Why can things not miraculously just like fall into place? And the universe does play its part, right? I'm not saying that it doesn't. There are some things I believe in anyway that are fated and destined to happen, but still we have choices. You could be handed things on a silver platter and still say no because you're like, oh, you're afraid of change. So that's anyway roundabout way of saying that's sort of what comes up for me around the change thing. And then there's the whole travel, like, I'm looking at going to Europe for the coldest part of the season of winter. So that's a big change. And that feels like a scary but expansive change. The thing that keeps coming up for me is like, I'm terrified about driving on the other side of the road. There's like, it feels like an extra pressure when you're driving your home because if anything did happen, but then this is all the stories that come up, right? And the fears. And what if you just moved in trust and not in fear? So yeah. What about for you? If you weren't afraid of change, Gail, what would you do differently?
I wanted to reframe the question for you. And because I'm a bit the same around the first bit of it about afraid of change, I'm like, I'm not sure necessarily I'm afraid of change per se, given I think we've both transitioned a lot in our lives. But I wanted to reframe it. It says, if you weren't afraid of anchoring, what would you do? It's like you're like, because literally
People,
you're just
Gail
like,
knows me too well.
well, it's more just like, because I think we focus in on, because almost our ego is a bit like as well, of like, we're not afraid of change. But actually, it's like, you talked a bit around there, and it's really interesting listening to how you talk about like your poetry or your lyrics, and, and then, but like the constant change brings with it, the constant change in your environment, as you were saying, like brings with it certain things that mean that you don't have capacity in your energy to to maybe sit and think, because some of these things probably need a little bit of safety and security to allow you to just sit and feel into the vulnerability without you then thinking, shit, am I going to get a parking ticket and I need to get out of here? So I don't know, maybe I just wondered if you reframed it, saying if you weren't afraid of anchoring somewhere, what would you do? That's not to say you're afraid of anchoring, but well, maybe if you wanted to chat about that, but
You know too much.
so just like that. So back
That's
deal.
great. That's a really great. No. That's a really good question. I think I'm aware. I think I've got in. Well, I know I have enough awareness around the fears that come up in terms of being in one place and anchoring and that kind of thing. And the word that came up last year a lot for me was rooting, being more rooted or planted. That was it. It wasn't even rooted, it was
Yeah.
planted. I saw a book that said rooted on it. That's why it's in my vicinity. But if I was more planted somewhere, because it's like, even thinking of myself as a tree and trees, this is what made me think of it. So I was in this area where there was beautiful woods. It's near the New Forest. And there was this well-being trail that they'd created. So Forestry England had created this well-being trail, which had signs along the way with little prompts. And they were really beautiful prompts, actually. Like the first time I did it really made me reflect. It made me stop. And I was like, okay, take the time to actually do this. And it was like going through the senses of what are 5 things that you can see and what are 4 things that you can touch and all these kind of things. Anyway, there was one of them that was connect. And at that point of the trail, they'd made a little clearing in the woods where they had some picnic benches and stuff. And on this sign, it was talking about the trees and obviously how they, within their root network, they send nutrients to each other and they support each other. And that's what we as humans are also meant to do, and it mentioned something that doesn't matter what you're going through, that there's always that support there. So they were encouraging people to sit down if they were, even if they were on their own or whatever, to sit down and connect with other people and things. And that's why that was in my head as well, because I was reflecting on that, and it's something that I really noticed that I don't have when I'm on the move a lot. And so I feel like that's a huge opportunity for me, and in terms of being in one place where I can make those connections and have that network. And I feel it with nature, and I feel connected when I'm out and about, to the trees, to the world around me. I feel that, and I feel it in my connection with friends like yourself, and it's in the communication that we have, and that keeps that network slightly sustained. But it's not the same as in real life. It's not the same as being able to go round to a pal's and have a cup of tea and have a hug when you're having a rough day, or to be able to say, do you want to come and join me for the woodland trail? Let's go and do the well-being walk together, and then sharing it with someone. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for me in being one place. And also I really notice it in terms of how I would show up in the way I'm being of service, because I'm really feeling squeezed at the moment by the shift in the season, the shorter days, because I'm off grid 95% of the time in the van, and I have a solar panel which is half not working at the moment. So I'm not getting even the full amount of solar of a day, and the days are so short. Like in summer, it's not so bad. I can charge my laptop and everything else that I need. Got my heater now and everything, but it's different in this time of the year, because I feel like then the resources that I require to be able to do what it is that I want to do and show up in the way that I want to show up, it feels like a bit of a squeeze. I say a bit of a squeeze, I'm underplaying it. It feels like a massive squeeze. And I'm like I notice a lot of frustration coming up, and I'm like, okay, well, what are different ways that I can find my way around that? Whether it's going
Well, look,
into a coffee shop and charging the laptop there and things like that. Yeah. So the obstacle, right? But, and it's things like, and this is a good example actually of Mercury retrograde as well, is technology, and that's what I'm really experiencing in the van at the minute. So then it's looking at, well, what are the alternatives? What are the solutions? Because there are some things that there are solutions for. I think that sometimes I've noticed this. I've noticed this a lot in van life journey, especially traveling on my own at points, has been that I can catastrophize when something happens. It's like, fuck, and my nervous system goes into fight or flight. And then it's like, I'm talking myself through the process of how do we get to a stable place within to be able to solve this. And I was looking at this whole electrical thing from a different perspective and being like, Sandra, this is a solvable problem. And yeah, it requires cash, it requires work. And right now, the resources are limited. So that's not something today that I'm going to get sorted. But there is a solution to this problem. And I think sometimes when we remind ourselves that it's not the end of the world, there are things that sometimes we can't see. And maybe that's what this is as well, this portal. And all you can see, if you look closely, if your attention is on the obstacle itself and not on the solution, then you can end up just sitting there staring at the fucking rock and you're not getting anywhere in life. But then it's like, okay, well, there's alternative routes that I can take and there's solutions that I can take advantage of. So that's been something for me that I'm like, okay, this is something that needs to be, it's just a problem to be solved, right? And when I think of it in terms of anchoring, like I do, I think sometimes, if I was in a house and I was in one place and I had, I could just plug in things. I wouldn't have to worry about electricity running out or the thing beeping at me and being like, that's enough electricity for the day, and things like that. And even like in terms of sleep and having somewhere that's quiet enough and recording a podcast, like even where I am today, you can probably hear the background traffic. So it's things like that. If you're in one place, it can make certain things easier. And I think I would like to find a balance. And I just feel like I've not found a play scale. And I know this has been the ongoing thing for the last couple of years, but I just have not found a place. And part of me wonders maybe it's not in the UK and that's why I've not found it yet. But then I'm like, am I just going to be traveling around the rest of the world being like, where is home? But home's within us. And I do feel that. I feel the sense of home within me. And I suppose it's having a place that would give me all of the other things, the connection, whether that's plugging into electricity or whether that's connection that I'm connecting with a new community and friends and people in business where we can do things in person, or I'd love at some point to hold retreats and things like that. And then that's location based, and that can change and that can be in different environments, but all of these things. So it's a very long answer to your question. I feel like you're sitting there with more questions ready for me.
No, not at all. I just thought it's because I
Are
suppose
you?
I'd like to think that there are people listening that are in a similar situation, or like, actually, I do embrace quite a lot of change, and like, maybe that's not what I'm afraid of.
Mm,
And, and I suppose it's interesting. It's like, it says afraid of change, which brings in like a fear, and I suppose it opens up the
yeah.
opportunity to explore what fears exist and whether they're true or ego manifested. And like you were
Yeah.
just using there, like a good example of, actually, because when you start to become aware of these things, you can talk yourself through them, which allows you to have a different perspective. And also to look
Mhm.
at, well, if it is solvable, what are the things that I can do, and what choices do I have? So it gives you sort of tools to navigate. But maybe it's for some people it won't be necessarily a fear of change. It might be a fear of, like, a thing of stability, and that could be, what is your perception of
Yeah.
stability? What comes to mind when you think
Mhm.
of that? But then equally, like, that fresh perspective, like you were saying, is like, well, a degree of anchoring or being rooted somewhere gives you some connection. So then you can start to say, well, you know,
Yeah.
is there a way in which you can have both, like the best of both worlds? So it's just, I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
from that other point of view, because, like, I suppose the listeners hopefully will appreciate, as you say, like, having a fluctuating landscape daily brings a lot of change into your life, even though you have sort of key routines. And then I just thought it was funny with the
Mm.
perspective on the solar panel around, it's like an obstacle, but as you say, it's like if you become preoccupied, I laughed as well, because I'm a bit like that where I'm just now. Anything online, I operate off like it's a 4G mobile signal router, and the bloody motorhome that's parked outside, and then of course the weather has impacts on like the mobile signal, and I have a house with a super
Mm.
fast broadband, and so I can become fixated on that one thing. And then it's just like, it's almost like I find myself, I'm like, I have to just breathe through it. But it's so funny how some of our sort of, let's call it spiritual tools, actually help us navigate modern world, like first world problems, I suppose, of like, you know, internet connection. But I think you're right.
Yep.
I've noticed. So the other thing that's come into mind is about the capacity for change that we can deal with in one go, maybe. In that way of, I
Yeah.
was reflecting on the question for me, thinking, well, you know, there's a lot of change in terms of like moving down here. And obviously, I'm not in a van. I do have like my basic internet needs met and electricity and so forth. But more thinking like it's a lot, and then thinking trying to establish as a business, and then really like what am I doing work wise? There's different aspects to my business and so on. And then like, buying a house, doing things up, the renovations. There's a lot that's kind of been in my psyche. And then it's almost like the thing I've been reflecting on is that if things like this were easy, everybody would do it, right? And I find
Mm,
myself, I get to a point where it's maybe not a capacity for change, but I feel it's almost like my body or my nervous system looking for a little bit of stability in order to like it's almost like build up the reserves to be like, right, well, Gail, you've got to go and push yourself, and you've
yeah.
got to put yourself out your comfort zone to go and find community, find connection. And like I was saying on last week's pod, like I was feeling like a little homesick, and it was like, not in a sense, I think it was like not missing one person or like one thing. It was like accumulation of things. But on reflection and thinking about that question today, it was just like that life up, like, because that's easy. Like I could go back up there tomorrow. I could slot into all the things I used to do, see the people that I used to see. You know, there's established networks, but then it's recognizing they didn't just happen overnight. I mean, some things do. Like some people come into your life and you're
Yeah.
like, I love you. You're like my soul family. I'm like, we need to hang out. Like, people like
Is that
yourself.
you?
I know. And then, and people like that do come into your world when you're open to it as well. And like people down here have as well. But it's things where, like it's just then it's like difficult. And then things like, I've got an opportunity around some netball stuff that I really want to explore, but I need a car. I want to push myself on and so then
Mm,
it's like, oh, that's the thing that's in my way. But actually maybe that will change. The car will get fixed. And then it's like, well, that opens things up. So maybe there is an opportunity for me to pause, build up my reserves of like, because some of this is out of my comfort zone. It's not my
yeah.
natural way of being. But it's like then saying, well,
Mm,
let's do some fun stuff. And, so it's an
yeah.
interesting one to look at because it's maybe not even necessarily like afraid of change, but maybe it's like, have you got a capacity? Is there something that maybe the question is like, is there something that you really want to call in and what's maybe stopping you? And then you might feel that there's an obstacle in your way, but maybe there's not really, or maybe that obstacle is self-imposed. Maybe it is just you need a little bit of like, you know, rest and recuperation to build up the reserves to give yourself the courage to
Mm,
go and put yourself out there. Or,
yeah.
maybe that obstacle is actually something that's technical and that will pass. And, but if you, as you say, if you don't
Yeah.
kind of take that step back and think, am I just staring at the obstacle and not the bigger picture? Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like sort of, you know, like also it's interesting to think about this coming up at this time of year as well. There's a lot going on. And a friend of mine, hey Nina, if you're listening, posted about
You know,
she's one of my human design cohorts, and she
oh,
does a lot of
girl.
stuff to do with oils, and she home educates. She's got two sets of twins. She does some tropic and things like that. But she's
Yeah, she's got
basically
twins.
a
That's
lot about
handy.
like stripping out toxins and shit that kind of like out of your life, right?
Mm,
And getting like good established routines, like really connecting and anchoring in. But she posted something this morning where she was talking about setting herself up for like a calm Christmas, and that, that and it's interesting that when we think of Christmas, it's like it's not necessarily it's not it defaults into crazy rather than defaulting into calm. And like we've got to make a conscious choice around it being a calm, and what tools can you lean on in order to bring peace and tranquility into your life. And it's funny because we are in this period of like wintering where we shouldn't be doing anything. But if you look outside at nature, everything's slowing down. Everything is becoming a little bit quieter, a little calmer. The trees are all kind of in. And but it's almost like things are starting to be chaos. And the amount of Christmas decorations that I've seen up already, I mean, to be honest, it's the 11th of the 11th
It's
today.
out of hand. Oh yeah, it's a portal. 11/11 portal.
It really,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, why the fuck have you got Christmas things up? Why?
That's outrageous. I know, I feel the same. I saw them in August in some places on my travels, and I'm just like, calm down.
I mean, this is
Calm
people's
down.
houses.
The word that comes to me, right? No, I'm
Yeah,
I
no,
was
no, I don't just mean
talking
in
about
shops.
shops.
I'm like,
Not seen houses
no.
yet.
There is somebody I follow on TikTok. I actually quite like watching her stuff. She does a lot, like she works from home all the time, and she's got a beautiful house, and she does her little routines. And then, but literally 1st of November, she pulled out all her Christmas stuff, created her house, and I'm like, so you're gonna have Christmas stuff up now for like 2 months? Mad.
Fair play. If that's your jam, I'm like, whatever makes you happy. But for me, I'm just like, it's all just got about a hand, I think. And it's like, I suppose it's what the essence of Christmas actually means to you. What is Christmas actually about? I feel like we've lost a lot of that in our society. That's become very commercialized. And I'm like, the whole thing is really about like who you're surrounded by and the time that you're spending with each other. But it's just, I decided to opt out of the chaos a long time ago because I'm not a
Not
fan.
decorating your van this
I'm not a
year.
fan. It's like you say, it's like I'll maybe get some more fairy lights up and a couple of wee decorations. I might do. I've not had a tree in the van. I might do a little bit of something, get the creative juices flowing, that kind of thing. But I don't feel the need to go crazy. It's not a huge thing for me. And yeah, I feel like it's just lost what it's actually about. But the word when you were talking there, about like our capacity for change and things like that, something came to me, and it's the word preparing. Like if you shifted your perspective and you looked at it that this time, whether it's disruptions or it's a pause and things feel maybe a bit slower, what if this is actually the period of preparation for what's to come? And what if this is an opportunity to take care of your body home, to build up, like Gail was saying, building up your strength for things, and also getting really clear on what it is you want from once the energy does start to pick up, and having that time with yourself and resting and getting the right nutrition and tapping into what it is that you need. And that nutrition could be food, it could be even the connections that you've got in your life, and nurturing yourself to a point so that it's like, this could be the phase where it's like just before everything kicks off. And how would you show up now if you knew that in, let's say, 6 weeks' time, your entire life could be jet setting? Like you could be, at the moment, you're maybe sitting on the runway and your flight's been delayed and you know where you're going. You've booked your ticket, but you're sitting there and you're like, God, why are we not moving yet? And you're building the frustration. The cabin probably feels hot and you're like, I just want to get out and stretch my legs, and you can't really go anywhere. And it's like, okay, well, you are where you are. What can you do with this time? The flight is going to take off and you're going to get to that destination, but how are you going to deal with where you are at this moment? So there we go. How would you deal with things differently?
Like that.
Yeah, I love a good analogy and a good visual. And on that note,
It's also,
my laptop's like,
yeah, I was
I'm
just going to
dying.
say, it's like, I know, I just thought it was such a good sort of reminder, like, because actually, like, when you said, like, what if this is actually your preparatory, easy for me to say, preparatory phrase, and you're just like, shit, what if it is? What if it is? And I hadn't
Imagine
realised,
it
and
is,
it's
right?
like,
And you're like, yeah, imagine the universe is watching you and is like, why are you not just getting your shit in order? Like, look after your
heck you bet.
body and sort through all your old shit in your house and get rid of the things that are not serving you anymore so that you can make space for what I'm about to deliver to you. Like, what if that's what this period was about? How would you look at it differently? Because it's even that question has made me think, fuck, actually, that's a good point. You know, it's like, it makes me think of like, what if this was like, you know, for anybody single? You know, we watch a lot of movies and stuff, and we've read a lot of stories about like, you know, romance and all that kind of thing, right? And maybe like, oh, I've been single for so long, or I've just had my heart broken, or whatever. And it's like, well, what if this is like the last time that you're ever going to be single? What if like the literal love of your life is a couple of weeks away and you're sitting moping about? Like, how would you want to spend your time? You know, last couple of weeks of single life, like what would you do differently? And it can apply to any area of life, right? Not necessarily just the love life, but it's like life can change. Things do change. Like, if life has taught me anything, is that change is inevitable and it's how we navigate it. So, yeah, juicy. Some food for thought as well. I'm like, the whole anchoring thing, I'll reflect on a little more.
I'm just looking forward to my obstacle being removed / my car.
Getting your car back.
It's just such
You'll
a
be on the road
really,
with your car karaoke going,
it would just be nice. I think,
road trip.
absolutely. But, you know, I
Yeah,
think this has been lots of food for thought, really. Been a really good chit
it
chat.
has.
Till next
Yeah,
time.
I think a lot of it's all in our perspective. Until next time, people, thank you for being here.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed this and would like to keep us fueled for future episodes, you can buy us a coffee.
Or you can make a donation via the link below. It's never expected, but always appreciated. Thanks for listening.